Hello and welcome to the video on single reed care. This video is specifically made for our clarinet players and saxophone players. You play a single reed, unlike a reed that could be called a double reed, which oboes and bassoons play. But we're going to just talk a little bit about your reed care and maintenance and what you should be doing each day when you get done playing. And then also I'm going to show you some examples of some reeds that you should not be playing on. Ones that will just make it much more difficult for you to play on because they're just worn out. You know, every once in a while you got to change your reed. I know it's not something we like to do because reeds can be kind of expensive. But really, if you don't take care of your reeds and if you don't change them out on a regular basis, you really put yourself at a disadvantage. It's much more difficult, if not impossible, to play in tune. So, you know, we go through the process of tuning, but if your reed is so worn out and thin, it just doesn't play very well for you. It starts to get a raspy sound to it, and things just don't work like they should. And it makes it much more difficult to play your part correctly if you're playing on a worn out or a broken reed. So let's start out with just the basics. You know, when you first get your reed, it comes in a case like that. You want to make sure you keep that case. This is a basic case. It works just fine. You can get some more, sophisticated looking cases where you can put 2 or even 4 reeds into it, which are kind of nice because they're very easy to slide your reeds in and out, at the beginning or end of class. The plastic cases that come with your reed can, be a little more difficult to put in carefully without chipping the ends of them, the ends of your reeds, and that's what you really want to be careful with. But they do provide enough ventilation to where they will dry out. You can see it has the little slots here to allow that moisture to get away from your reed. So I'll take this reed out of the case carefully, and as we look at it, we'll notice that this reed is very clean. The edges at the top are very crisp. If we turn it over, you can see there, brand new reed, always very nice. Little tougher to play on at first, which is I know why some of the reasons why some of you guys don't like to change your reeds out that often, but eventually it breaks in, and then it plays just fine for you. You get a good tone quality with it. It won't be raspy or weak sounding, and it'll just be easier to play overall, play your part well. So when you're done playing, you want to keep your reed like new as best you can. Putting it in your mouth, make sure you don't chip the ends or the tip of the reed, because that of course is the thinnest part of the reed. It's thicker down here. Remember not to touch this part with anything, or as least as possible. When we start, I tell you don't ever touch the end of that reed, and I tell you that because I know it's very easy to break that if you're not very careful. As you get older and you get a little more experience in playing, you can touch the ends of this reed, but you do want to limit it, how much you're touching it. You never want to push down on the top of the reed because that'll fold over the edge, and then as soon as that happens, the grains are broken and the reed is no longer playable. As much as you would like it to be and you try to smooth it out, it just doesn't work, and I'll show you an example of that later in the video. So say we get done playing and we take our reed off, so we slide it off the mouthpiece and try not to hit the ligature on it. When we're done, there's going to be moisture on this reed from your mouth, and that's normal. It's supposed to be there. A dry reed does not play very well, so that's why we moisten it up in our mouth before we play any notes. If you try to play in a dry reed, you'll notice it's very difficult to play. So there has to be a little bit of moisture on there. But when we're done, we want to take off as much excess moisture as possible. So what we do is you can take your fingers, and I always say, make a scissors, put it on the end, and you just do this, 3-4 times, and your fingers will be a little wet, yes, but it's okay, it's fine. As long as you're not cleaning someone else's reed with your fingers, it's okay, it's yours. So you do that a couple of times, 3-4 times, making sure to pull straight across and out each time, so that you don't, again, accidentally bend your reed in a way that's going to break it. So then we turn it over, we make sure it looks pretty dry. If it's not, do it a couple more times. If it is, it's good. Don't wipe it, on your pants or anything like that. Just use your fingers. In any excess, you can use a tissue or a paper towel, and dry your fingers off. Then you take your reed and carefully, you're going to slide it back in here. And now this is where you have to be careful because you don't want to hit it on the edges. And you just carefully slide it in there. And then it should be good. Then you can put it back in your case. And again, you'll have these vent holes on here to help get some of that moisture out. Now ideally, it'd be perfect not to put this back in your case. But of course we have to. You know, if you could at home, you leave it outside of your case. Because we put it inside our case and we close up our case, and that's pretty much, it's pretty airtight. And then, you know, the moisture can't ever really get off this reed. So that's why we want to make sure we dry it as much as possible out of there. Old cases start to smell kind of bad because we're putting old reeds in there and the moisture gets into the fabric of the case. And of course that's, you know, over time can make that not smell the greatest. So we take this and we put it in our case. Ideally at home we can leave it outside of our case, just like we did with our cleaning swab. You put that in your case and you close it up wet, well, it never really dries and it can get kind of stinky. So again, that's why we have you tie it up on the outside here at school also. So now let's talk a little bit about some reeds that I've come across over the years. Reeds that I've had students playing on as I walk around the room and I see them and I go, whoa, we can't play on that reed. You have to change your reed out. So my recommendation, you know, if you're playing 5 days a week in school, I would say after 3 weeks, you're going to want to trade that reed out for a new one. You want to get a couple reeds going anyway, just to kind of keep a cycle of reeds going. So you're never really playing on always any time on a brand new reed, you know, like at a concert. So, you know, you get 2 or 3 reeds going, you know, change them out every day, and that way you'll have, you know, a good, you know, amount of time on those reeds before you need to change them out again. You usually get a box of 10. And if you're still on your first box of 10 from 6th grade and now you are, you know, heading into 7th grade or 8th grade, you really need to start changing your reeds more often, okay? Here's a reed, an example of a reed that was played for a long time, probably too long, and the tip is all shredded away. You can see all the different angles on that. And then also, if you look carefully, you can see this discoloration right here. Now that's from not only just moisture, and I'm not going to call it mold, but it's going to be some discoloration from the sugars in our mouth. You know, if you're coming from lunch, ideally we'd like to brush our teeth before we play our instrument, but we just don't have the time. So you want to rinse your mouth as best you can. You know, drink some water before you come and play your instrument, and trying to get that as many sugars off of your mouth from lunch as possible. You know, out of your mouth from lunch as possible before you play. This reed was also probably put away wet quite often, and you can see again that discoloration in the reed. This is something you just can't play on, just let alone, you know, this is kind of gross. But then again, with this right here shredded away as compared to, you know, a new reed. I mean, the ends of the reed is where the vibration is going to really occur, and here you've chopped away a good part of the reed, so that's not going to work very well for you. Here's another example of a reed. Again, you start seeing some of that discoloration right here. It's a little more faint on this one. It's like more grayish. But again, this was wearing away and it's chipped away at the top. You can't play on that reed. If I ever come across a student, I see that, I'm going to take that reed off of your instrument. And if you don't have any reeds, I'm going to give you a reed until you get a replacement reed. But also you can see it's, if you look very carefully here, it's split right through here. And again, this reed is just not going to function in a way that's going to be conducive to good playing. It's going to make things very difficult. It'd be like playing on a broken, you know, if you were in basketball and the soles of your shoes were falling off, well, it's going to make it a lot harder to run down the court, you know. And so the same thing, we want to make sure our equipment is in good working order all the time. Here's another one, kind of an extreme case. You can see it looks like maybe lunch, we were using this almost as a toothpick. We're missing parts of the reed over here, is completely split off. This over here, I mean, this is an unplayable reed, yet it's a reed that students will attempt to play on. And of course, you're not going to get a good sound, and it's going to be really difficult to play, if at all. And here, of course, is what happens to a reed when you push down on the top of it. You can see if you push down, it just folds over because it's so thin. Again, remember that first lesson on reeds, I show you I hold it up to the light and I show you how the light shines through the tip of that reed, because it really is that thin. So we want to make sure that we're not playing on reeds like that. We want to make sure that the reeds we play on are looking new and fresh, and are new and fresh. Now here's an example. Here's a saxophone reed, and this is an example of one that looks fine. I mean, if you really examine it, you'll see that there's a little notch taken out up here. And could you still play on that with that little notch? Yeah, but not ideally. I mean, you want to get rid of it. You want to know this is pretty much at the end of its life, but it still looks pretty good. But if you look very carefully on the edge here, there is a split. And it's really hard to see, but you can, when you really examine it, I'm pushing up on it, you can see, I can see the split coming right through the middle of that. So while it looks neat, and I can kind of like push it down and kind of almost mend it back together, as soon as you play, that reed is split right through there. So is it still playable? Yes. Ideally, should you play on it? No. If it's an emergency and this happens in a concert for a song, can I continue playing it? Yeah, I could probably make it through that song, but I'm going to want to trade it out for a used reed to finish the concert. Again, don't ever pick up a brand new reed and put it on your instrument just before a concert. It's bad news. It's going to squeak and squawk and make all kinds of really horrible sounds because it's not broken in yet. You don't ever want to break a reed in at a concert. So always, that's why I say, have 2 or 3 workable reeds all the time. You play on it for 2 weeks, put it away and save it. Mark it. I'm going to save this one for later in case of emergency. I know it works. It still sounds good. If I'm on stage and my reed breaks, I can trade it out and I know it's going to be just fine. It's not going to take a long time to get moistened up and ready to play for the next song, because we just don't have that much time. So again, reed care and maintenance. Make sure you're drying it off each day when you're done. Give it a good swipe with your fingers again. Be careful not to touch the ends of that, push down or anything like that. Minimal fingers on the part that goes in our mouth. Keep, hold on to the reed at the thicker end down here. And just, like I said, it'll make your playing a lot easier. You'll feel better about what you're doing. You won't have to struggle. Again, I know reeds are expensive. They can get costly. But if you take care of your reeds, you should only have to get 1 or 1.5 boxes of reeds for an entire school year. So just kind of plan for that each year. And anything over that, we have to start thinking, well, maybe I just need to be a little more careful with my reeds. If you're going through your reeds, once, one a week because you're breaking them, then we just have to talk about a little bit more being more careful with our reeds and our care of our reed. And it's part of our instrument. So the same thing, we want to make sure that everything is in good working order all the time. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about in this video, please stop by and see me. Sign up for a lesson on the lesson board. It's always available. No question is going to be rejected, or I'm not going to look at you, or I might look at you funny, but it might not be because of your question. It might just because, you might have food on your face. I don't know. So, if you have any questions, come in and see me, and then we can talk about reed care and maintenance a little more in depth, or something maybe specific that you have questions on that I didn't address in this video. Other than that, hey, happy playing, and see ya.